Packers, Bucs, Battle of the Bays, the GOAT, and Tom Brady. Kyle, hit it.
This is Pulse of the Pack.
There's Bledsoe. Down he goes. And there's Reggie White. And that's that hump move. Reggie's coming again. And Reggie White. Reggie White's going to take over this game right now.
Begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback taken. He's into the touchdown of the Packers are out in front. 20-17. There's 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions, NFL champions for the third straight year.
Barr lays it up for Freeman, and it's incomplete. Or did he make the catch at the 15? What are they going to roll it? He caught it. Touchdown. He did what?
What indeed? What is going on, everybody? We have Pulse of the Pack here live with my usual co-host back. Andy and Peter were busy doing other stuff, so I had to ask them to come back. To oblige, I have the great Paul Brettel and the remarkably average Jason Perrone. Gentlemen, welcome back. It's nice to see you guys all again.
I wish I could say the
Happy
same.
to be here.
I suppose I earned that one. Guys, we have a wonderful week, fresh off of a bye. Last week, obviously, we had a bit of a different show. We talked a little different about just some general themes about the team and everything like that. But I didn't get a chance to talk to you guys. Obviously, the Packers are 4-0 going into Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And obviously, Jason, you are joined by the fraudulent goat over your right shoulder today. I appreciate Tom sticking around for us today. And Tom, you've hung out with me this week. I appreciate you being around because I don't know for you guys that saw, here is a opportunity that we had this week. This was our NFL Network debut for Game On. So Jamal, on that note, let's set the record straight. Whose quarterback is better, yours or Ronald Jones?
Come on, man. I'm pretty sure my quarterback knows what fourth down is. You know what I mean?
So that was a clip. It aired on NFL Network.
That wasn't the whole clip. The rest of it's glorious.
The rest of it's pretty good, but it's made its way through Bleacher Report and
I'm happy that it's getting the airtime, but Jamal's just speaking the truth. So
he's not wrong. And I just had somebody ask me last night, and one of my good friends, he said this and I appreciated it. It was, how do you feel knowing that Tom Brady has now seen your face and maybe it affects him just a little bit? And I just said, I own him. And
they got Jacob's face up in the Tampa Bay locker room for bulletin board material.
I hope so. I hope that's the case. I had a friend of my friend's dad had said that if Brady balls out tomorrow, that I'm getting a punch to the face because I fired him up and I said, Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander have my back. So boys, you've got my back, right? So, but let's get into it a little bit, guys. Obviously the Packers 4-0, they blew out the Atlanta Falcons. They've gotten through the first 4 weeks unscathed. Before we get too much into this matchup with the Battle of the Bays, an old school matchup from my childhood and a little nostalgia this week, honestly, for some of the younger fellas like me and Paul. Jason, this is kind of old hat to you, but just some thoughts, Jason, on this team through the first 4 weeks. And what do you think of this team now that it is 4-0? And has it changed your thought on what maybe this team could be as we go through the 12-game stretch that is between now and the end of the regular season?
No, they're special. I said on Quick Slants after they beat the Saints, like, no fans, it doesn't matter. It's a special team. It's a special season. And we know what's out there that could change that. Of course, it takes a worldwide crazy situation to take this team down, but they're playing well. They're firing on all cylinders. I don't want to sit here and compare them to 2010, 96. They're not like those teams, but they're their own brand of great. And I just want to say, I don't think I have ever actually publicly given Matt LaFleur his due. I think Matt LaFleur has done a phenomenal job. He deserves a lot of credit for what they're doing. I mean, when you've got the staff, offense, defense, and of course you got, an automatic kicker like Mason Crosby. I mean, this team just, there's no way that they should really lose any football game. I'm sure they will at some point, but no, they've got everything in front of them right now. And they're one of 3 teams left that haven't lost a game. So yeah, it hasn't changed.
And Paul, obviously, Jason hit on something I think that's important, and that is that when we went through in past years, we've gone through the schedule, and we did it this year too. You go through the schedule and you look at it and you're like, okay, that game, they can't win that one. And they probably can't win that one. And they probably can't win that one. There are no games like that left on the schedule, barring relative health. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, if David Bakhtiari is healthy, if they have some, without a catastrophic injury, there are no games left on this schedule that I feel like Green Bay can't go in there and win. Do you feel the same way?
I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, looking through the schedule, there's no game that I don't expect them to lose. Obviously, they're going to. I'm not going to sit here and predict they're going to go 16-0, but the way the offense is clicking, I mean, Matt LaFleur's play calling, Aaron Rodgers is playing at an elite level, and that's in part because of Matt LaFleur's play calling. But the offensive line is fantastic. Devontae Adams is coming back. Aaron Jones just doing Aaron Jones type things. And even the defense, I mean, they've taken their lumps this year. They've had their ups and downs, but they've come up with the big stop, the big turnover when they've had to. And it's that same bend but don't break. And field goals, if the defense is giving up field goals, that's not going to beat this offense. So, no, I mean, if you go through each game this year, I mean, I expect the Packers to win them all. And like I said, that's not going to happen. But they're the cream of the crop in the NFL, to put it simply.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think, because coming into the year, you just weren't sure. They were a primary regression candidate. They were a team that you weren't sure were they going to be. You thought they might make the playoffs, obviously, but I don't know if you thought highly of them as who were they behind in terms of being a Super Bowl contender. I mean, those were certainly numbers that you couldn't quite figure out. And now the sky's the limit. And I think if you want to think of my expectations for this team, look behind Paul's head. There's two very specific dates on the back there. And I think that it's got me dreaming big. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to happen, but this could be the first of 2 trips to Tampa Bay this year. And let's jump into it, guys. The Packers, their first big bit of news that they had today drop was they had a couple players jump in and start practicing this week off of their injured reserve. And one of them has been activated as we started here, and that is Equanimous St. Brown, the darling of, it seems like, every offseason since he's been drafted, the wide receiver. And he plays a sexy position. He catches the ball. He scores touchdowns. I get it. The question I have for you guys, because as he was activated this week, it already started of, okay, it's time to start that hype train again, get it back rolling. Because if you look at it from a talent standpoint, there's a good argument to be made, and perhaps it's the right argument. Equanimous St. Brown's the second most talented wide receiver on this roster after Devontae Adams. Maybe third, but could be second. The most talented wide receiving core that you can throw on the field this year with the Packers when they're all healthy is probably Devontae Adams, Equanimous St. Brown, and Allen Lazard once he comes back from his core injury. That being said, EQ hasn't practiced in a long time, and he hasn't played a game that matters since December 23rd, 2018. To expect him to just jump in and make an impact, I think would be a little silly. That being said, there is, I think, a role that could potentially be carved out for him because of an injury. And it's unfortunate that this injury has found its way in, and that is Tyler Ervin. And Tyler Ervin is out this week with a wrist injury, and that sucks. Ervin is a nice player. Obviously, he gives the Packers some value in the return game. He's been a good kick returner and punt returner. Quite literally took the Packers from being the worst punt return team in the history of the NFL when he arrived last season to at least a respectable unit. He hasn't done anything huge this year as a returner, but again, he's steady there and quietly a big part of their offense with jet motion and just some of the stuff that he does as far as the gadget player type stuff. That might be the role that I think you see EQ play, because if he doesn't play that role, there really isn't somebody that fits that role relatively seamlessly on this roster right now. Maybe Malik Taylor is somebody that could look at that. Darius Shepard could certainly be something like that. I know, for example, last year they had Geronimo Allison doing stuff like that. They had Allen Lazard doing stuff like that early in the year. But it doesn't work if that is not an explosive athlete, which Equanimous St. Brown certainly is. And he's that big slot. He can do some stuff down the field. Aaron Rodgers obviously likes him. He spoke highly of him this week on the Pat McAfee show when he was asked about him coming back on a fan call that he was given. I think that is the sweet spot to get him not only back, but back and acclimated. You're not asking him to be a huge contributor right off the bat. And I think you could also see some stuff in that role for Aaron Jones as well. So you could kind of ease his burden a little bit coming back. That being said, I did have somebody say that he could have 5 for 140 and 2 touchdowns when he comes back, which kind of fit the mold for how this season has gone, obviously, right? They've had a different guy each of the first 4 weeks lighted up on offense last week or 2 weeks ago. Last game, of course, it was large Robert Tonyan. So, Paul, let's start with you here. What do you think as far as EQ coming back? What kind of role can he have in this offense on Sunday and in the long term?
On Sunday, I'm with you. I think it's going to be limited. I know, Jacob, I think it was you who put out a tweet earlier this week that basically said he hasn't played since 2018, and then to expect him to step in on Sunday and have this monster game, I think that's reaching a little bit. And now the fact that I've said that, he's going to go on to have a 6-catch, 100-yard game and 2 touchdowns, of course.
Sounds good.
Well, I hope so. But that's my expectation, is it's going to be a limited capacity. I think Raven Green is a good example. He was more proven than I think what EQ has been, and he missed majority of last year. He missed week 1 against Minnesota, and they brought him along slowly in weeks 2 and 3. And then in week 4 against Atlanta, we saw him have 50 snaps. I'm kind of expecting something similar with Equanimous. I think that he can be used in that Tyler Ervin-esque role. I also think that Marquez Valdez-Scantling is someone with that speed and agility who can fill that role as well. But for the time being, my expectations, they are tempered. Hopefully I'm wrong. The long term, though, I think he can be someone who is a reliable slot receiver for the Green Bay Packers. There was this excellent article by Benjamin Solak of the Draft Network. He wrote this back in 2018, EQ's rookie year, where it talked about EQ's route running ability. So he's 6'3", 200-plus pounds. He obviously has the size, the physicality where he can create space, but Solak broke down his route running ability and the nuances and how he knows how to get open. And especially in the slot, that coupled with his size, he can become a real weapon from there. And so in the long term, and by long term, I mean, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, not a year, 2 years from now, this season, I think he can become a go-to slot guy for the Green Bay Packers. Like I said, my expectations for this game in particular, they're tempered, they're limited. He'll get some snaps here and there. Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, probably I'm wrong. Go add EQ to your fantasy team, right? Because I just jinxed it. But that's what I think is for the short term and long term for him.
So, Jason, go buy his jersey right now. And Fred Thurston is in the chat, and I believe there's a saying about payback, because I did this during the Freezer podcast earlier this week, and that's Alex in there, obviously. But he's asking if we're ever going to see my hair, because I had asked if we were going to see his. The answer is yeah, why not? There ain't much there. I am freshly shaved. And I wear the ball cap because there's a bald spot that kind of hangs out towards the back here. I have what did they call it when I was in school? They called it M-head. I have the LeBron hairline. So that is my tribute to 4-time NBA champion, second greatest basketball player, an emphasis on second, LeBron James. So that is my thought there. So I wear the hat because I don't want it to shine in your guys' face and blow things off. So, Jason, anyways, I was mentioning, should I go buy EQ's jersey now and kind of start on those sorts of things? But no, seriously, what are your thoughts on EQ's role potentially tomorrow and kind of going into this long-term future?
Well, the quarterback loves him. We know that. So he's going to have some kind of a role. But the second the passing game struggles tomorrow, everyone's going to freak out and want to know why EQ's not in the game. This is going to be the same group that wants to know why A.J. Dillon isn't taking every goal line carry. So you got to bring him back slowly, and he may have a bigger role. Who knows? I mean, but the thing is this offense, first of all, they don't need him to have a huge game because they have schemed and gotten guys, like you said, Jake, they've had different guys step up every week. So if it's going to be somebody different this week, that sounds good, especially with no Tyler Ervin. I think EQ, you mentioned Geronimo Allison. And I started developing a little bit of a twitch thinking about him doing a jet sweep with the ball in his hand. And it just was so painful.
To be fair, I can't think of one that they actually gave him, but that's probably because the defense saw him in motion. With all due respect to Geronimo, he's a great story. He made some plays when he was in Green Bay, but yeah, they probably laughed when they saw him go in motion.
That's what I was going to say is, the play was probably successful because the defensive backs were doubled over laughing. They weren't able to like pursue at a proper angle or whatever it be. But I like EQ a lot, and I'm biased because Jake, you and I were in the house when they beat the Niners at Lambeau Field 2 years ago and on a walk-off there. And EQ had a huge catch on the sideline in that game. That was his first big grab. He had a big one against the Jets. I think we've talked about that a bazillion times. Paul, you and I and Mark Eckel talked about it on Pack-A-Day earlier today on our show. It adds great depth to the receiving core. And when Jake, you make a really good point there. When you're able to activate a guy he's obviously going to take a little while to shake the rust off, but who immediately becomes your potentially second most talented or at worst third most talented receiver, and you're adding it to an offense that's already churning like it is right now. That's one of the reasons why when you asked earlier how I feel about this team, I'm like, the sky's the limit. Like there's just what other spoils is this team going to be able to reap this season? And we haven't even seen Kamal Martin get activated yet. That's coming soon too on the defensive side. So yeah.
Yeah, and that could be interesting. And something I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about because the linebacker position has been a little intriguing, and it was a discussion in the preseason of, oh my God, what happens if Christian Kirksey gets hurt? Now, granted, 4 games in, that's a very small sample, and I'm not putting these guys in the Hall of Fame, but Chris Barnes has played very well in limited time. Ty Summers has done some nice things. Oren Burks has done some nice things, and Kamal Martin was a story of training camp. Chris Barnes has done enough to the point where I made a bold prediction, if you want to call it that, after the Atlanta game that basically said Christian Kirksey might get Wally pipped. And in order to do that, it doesn't take a whole lot because the Packers only play one inside linebacker a vast majority of the time anyways. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're asking for a whole heck of a lot for that person to do that. The nice part is it's very possible, and the Packers would love this if this were true. If they found their inside linebacker tandem of the future with Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin, or Chris Barnes and some combination of Barnes, Martin, Summers, with a sprinkle of Oren Burks and some of them overhang defenders like Raven Green and some of them.
You know what, Paul, Jake listened to Pack-A-Day and he heard what you said.
You did.
Paul said that exact same thing. Yeah, they're rich in that area now.
They might have their linebackers of the future, or at least the foreseeable future, in Barnes, Kamal Martin, and Ty Summers. And it's, ironic that everyone wanted the Kenneth Murrays, the Patrick Queens, and it's a 5th rounder, a 7th rounder, and a UDFA.
Yeah, we'll see if it ends up.
Right, there's still a lot to be determined from there, but
exactly, got a long way to go. So that part is interesting to me. But Chris Barnes has definitely been one of the pleasant surprises. One of the other pleasant surprises that the Packers have had early in the season was the health of Kevin King. But that's something that kind of reared its ugly head again during the Atlanta game. He exited with a quad injury, and then didn't really practice this week. And he's deemed by Matt LaFleur to be a game time decision. So I must ask you guys, if that happens, is it, and it's a legitimate question because when King exited, Josh Jackson played, but then in the middle of the series, he wasn't playing anymore. So I'm not going to call it a benching because I don't know if that's what it was, but it sure looked like one. Is it Josh Jackson or is it Paul's guy, Kadar Hallman, that plays? And I think this is an interesting case for 2021. And I'll get to that here once I let these guys talk, because as my good friend and great person, Todd Varney, would like to say, is if you can stay awake through my rants, then it's worthwhile going live with me. But I'll save that to the end to let these guys get to their point. If Kevin King cannot go tomorrow, and they'll obviously do a lot of different things, but in general, how do you guys configure your cornerback situation? The good news is they have somebody on the other side of the defense named Jair Alexander, and he's really, really good. So that's a really good starting point. But on the other side of him, how does that go? Jason, I'll start with you.
I'm gonna steal from Mark Eckel, and I'm gonna say it's not gonna be either of those two guys. What I would rather see is them take a chance on Shannon Sullivan in the Kevin King role, bring Darnell Savage up in the slot, and then put Raven Green back there with Adrian Amos at safety. I just don't trust either Josh Jackson or Kadar Hallman to play significant snaps. I mean, it's fine if they come in and play, but not significant snaps, because Josh Jackson has proven if he plays any decent amount of time in a game, the quarterback eventually finds him. And say what you will about the math struggles that the opposing quarterback this week has. He is going to figure out where 27 is on the field. And that just worries me when you've got a future Hall of Fame quarterback and Mike Evans is playing and you can just play pitch and catch there. I think I'm being a little harsh towards Josh Jackson. He just has not proven to be durable in cover or be able to sustain that coverage through an entire game. That's my bigger concern there.
Paul, tell me why you'd pick Kadar Hallman.
I mean, at this point, I feel like we know who Josh Jackson is. We've seen it. I mean, we heard this hype, not maybe hype's a strong word, but we heard about him performing well in camp. But the Atlanta game and what we saw in that exhibition when Kevin King left, I think that's just kind of a summation of his career up to this point. We know who he is. Kadar Hallman, president of the Kadar Hallman fan club here, he's only been targeted 3 times, but he has 2 pass breakups, hasn't allowed a completion. However, with that said, there was obviously the inexperience. I think as I've said on this show before, I think he's an ideal fit for Mike Pettine's system. And I think that he is going to be a Packer for the foreseeable future, making plays at the cornerback position. But I agree with Jason. I think you kick Chandon Sullivan out wide, and then whether it's Darnell Savage or Raven Green took 17 snaps against Atlanta in the slot. I think you roll with that group because of the experience. Obviously, Jair's proven. He's having an all-pro campaign. But Chandon Sullivan, between last year and the first few weeks this year, he's a proven cornerback. I think you just roll with that and hope it takes you to the finish line.
Here's my thought on it. Answer Justin is a leopard does not change his spots. Mike Pettine's going to play what Mike Pettine plays regardless. I do have one simple question, though, as to whether or not he should. Roger, is Tom Brady still elite?
No.
There you go. Tom Brady.
Justin actually turned his name. Justin actually turned his name backwards or forwards or whatever it be. Yeah,
that must how we know that we're friends with Justin now. His name is forward, so I didn't have to say I can't because I didn't butcher his name the first time and didn't realize it was Justin backwards. So, there you go, Roger. Thank you for chiming in on that. I appreciate that. So Paul is about to wet himself.
Yeah.
But anyway, my thought on this is very simple. This could be a glimpse, potentially, into 2021 and what that looks like. Because obviously, newsflash, the Packers have some good players that are going to hit free agency in 2021. Thank you, Aaron. You are my hero. You are my heroine.
Heroin.
Yeah. My thought is David Bakhtiari is going to be a Packer in 2021. I think Aaron Jones is going to be a Packer in 2021 too. And Brian Gutekunst basically said in an interview with The Ringer, and if you guys haven't read that article, excellent. Kyle, do me a favor, find that article, throw it in a banner and get it up for me if you can do that. But Brian Gutekunst basically had a really good interview with Kevin Clark and said the salary cap is what it is and it's problematic, but he thinks they're going to find a way to keep their good players. Well, let's do some math. Okay, they're good players. There's a few of them, obviously, that are hitting free agency. Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, Corey Linsley, Kevin King, friend of the program, Jamal Williams. How many of those guys they're going to be able to keep is obviously still relatively limited, and it's going to come down to some decisions. I think Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones are going to be Packers in 2021. I don't know about the others. And Kevin King, if he's allowed to walk, I don't know what that means. And what that could look like at 2021 at the cornerback position could be what this weekend looks like. Is it Josh Jackson? Does he get a prove-it year at cornerback? Here's your chance to be, you were a second-round pick. We obviously liked you. You have a lot of those things. Maybe, maybe not. Is it Kadar Hallman? If Kadar Hallman shows well, they could certainly say we have confidence, very similar to the way Chandon Sullivan did last year as a dime back and allowed them to essentially let Tramon Williams sit on the street despite having a good year. And Chandon Sullivan has proven them right. Mm-hmm. He has the lowest rated passer rating as a nickel corner this year. Big deal. He's a really good player. Friend of the program as well. Also been on Open Book. Check that out on Wednesdays at 5:00. Zach Jacobson and Eli Berkovitz. Or do the Packers have to spend either A, some money on a stopgap cornerback, similar to not him specifically, obviously, because if he doesn't play this year, I imagine he's retired, but somebody like Tremont Williams or a high draft pick. And they may have to do that anyways. That's kind of my thought on what this game could look like at the cornerback position is to, if Josh Jackson and Hallman both play well in King's absence, then you could be like, okay, we feel pretty good about that position going into 2021. Jackson's got one more year under contract. Kadar Hallman's got a couple more years under contract. Paul mentioned he fits well in Pettin's system. There's some good stuff going on there, obviously. If they don't play well, then you start worrying a little bit and start wondering about, again, it's great. You hit on Jair Alexander, and now you have to overhaul essentially that entire position group again. And you're a turned ankle from Jair Alexander away in 2021 from looking not quite Ladarius Gunter on Julio Jones-esque, but very similar to that. So that's the scary part. Me, what I would do, you have the investment in Josh Jackson. I know what Paul said as far as you know what he is. Do we? I don't know. I think that it's fair to say that whenever he's been inconsistent. He's been either victimized or penalized. I think that's fair. I was one of his biggest supporters coming into the draft, and I'm teetering on the brink of jumping off the bridge, so to speak. Ooh. Getting benched for Kadar Hallman, and that's no disrespect to Kadar Hallman, but when you're a second-round pick and you get benched for a sixth-round pick, draft status gets you the benefit of the doubt.
This is your son, man. These are some strong words.
I am nothing if not fair to my children.
That's right.
I did the same thing to Baker, and I did the same thing to Rashawn, and they've both played well since then. And yes, Blake does call them her brothers. Nonetheless, if my son Joshua does not play well, I am ready to move on. But I think you need to give him that opportunity to play in a position where, again, and there is some value to the idea that, yes, he's been misused. His rookie season, he played slot corner. That doesn't make any sense. I have no idea why they wasted any time doing that. Last year, didn't really play a whole hell of a lot because the corners in front of him didn't get it hurt. That's a good thing. Like, honestly, if King doesn't play, I also think Jackson matches up somewhat well with the guys like Godwin and Evans, just because he has some of that size to go with everything. That's the way I would do it. Obviously, I wouldn't hesitate to go with someone like Hallman if Jackson struggles. That being said, I'm crossing my fingers and everything else you can humanly think of and hoping Kevin King can play, because Kevin King's a good player. That's your hope, is that Kevin King can go, because Kevin King is a good starter. He's not a great player, but he's a very good one. And very good players at cornerback are hard to come by. And even if Tom Brady is in his diminished state, Roger told us earlier that he's not elite. And even still, that's Chris Godwin, that's Mike Evans, and both of those guys are off the injury report and going to play. Scotty Miller's a good player too.
I was going to say Kevin King is top 15 out of all NFL quarterbacks in snaps per target.
Quarterbacks, that's interesting. Did he play a different position now?
Cornerbacks. Meaning
I thought I heard quarterbacks too. I was confused a little bit.
Well, no, cornerbacks.
Happens easily.
Meaning that he is, and we saw it against Detroit, he didn't have any targets against him, meaning that he is sticking close and they aren't throwing in his direction.
Yeah, and I that's valuable, obviously. Mm-hmm. You know, you wonder, this is the best test for the Packers. Mom, I've told you about this before. She just said she didn't realize she had more grandchildren. Yes, Rashawn, Baker, Joshua, and of course the beautiful Blake. But that's beside the point. This is the best test the Packers secondary has faced coming into this season.
Absolutely.
Because with all due respect to Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, both of those guys were hobbled. The Falcons are bad and they're a defeated football team. Some people tried to say they were desperate. I think they're just playing out the string. This Bucs team is desperate, and there's anything you do know about Mr. Thomas Edward Brady Jr. is those boys don't go away, and they're not going to, even if they're coming off a bad loss against the Bears, they're going to come with their best shot. And Tom Brady acknowledged that even if it's not Rodgers against Brady, it is still in some way they have to keep pace with each other. And they know that. And both of them have kind of acknowledged that this week from the standpoint of, no, we're never on the field at the same time. That being said, they do have to understand that the other guy is not going to make maybe a mistake that someone like Kirk Cousins might make. So you have to be on your A game. And Tom Brady, I still think, even if his arm is diminished, still has the mind that makes him a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the NFL. And that's certainly going to help. And these receivers certainly help that as well. Let's look on the offensive side of the ball, because this is really, on the Packers side of things, the best defense they've played this season too. This is the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL. And they have some players on that side of the ball. Vita Vea not going to play. Let's start with, I have to start here because my mom's going to have a rough go tomorrow because,
Oh yeah, the Brady factor.
well, not just the Brady factor. My mom's least favorite player on the defensive side of the ball is Ndamukong Suh, who also happens to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So obviously old friend Ndamukong Suh is going to be reunited tomorrow. Let's hope he can maybe keep from stepping on Aaron Rodgers' leg tomorrow.
Keep him away from 12.
Let's just keep him away in general. I like that idea. Shaq Barrett is one of the best pass rushers in all of football. He was an all-pro last season, playing under the franchise tag for Tampa Bay. And of course, Jason Pierre-Paul, an old nemesis. The Packers are kind of facing quite a few of their old nemesis tomorrow. You figure Brady to some degree. Obviously, you got those 2 pass rushers and Ndamukong Suh in the middle. No Vita Vea in the middle. And that could be a big deal because this is a very good run defense that the Packers are playing against. But they've lost their anchor in the middle. Paul, how big of a deal do you think that is for this Packers team looking to find? And they are playing in their first true road game. Tampa Bay is going to have fans in the stands tomorrow, albeit at limited capacity.
I think losing Vea is going to be huge for the Bucs. How they handle that, that's the big question in all of this. But they're only allowing 58 rushing yards per game, 2.5 yards per carry. This is a stout Bucs run defense. And Vea has been one of the better nose tackles in the NFL this season. He's not Kenny Clark, but he is the Buccaneers version of Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark handles double teams for the Packers. He penetrates the middle, making it easier for pass rushers to get through. That's what Vea does for the Buccaneers. So how they handle that is going to be key. But you listed the guys, Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. This is still a stout defensive front. And Barrett, he led the league in sacks last year with 19.5. So like I said, it's a dangerous defensive front. The Packers' offensive line is going to be put to the test. But I think there is that opening without Vea there where the Packers can take advantage of what the Bucs are missing with him.
Yeah, and that would be a big deal. Obviously, this is a team where if you let those pass rushers pin their ears back and get after you, that could be difficult. And this Packers offensive line has been as good as any, actually better than any this year. They've been the best offensive line in the NFL as far as keeping people off of Aaron Rodgers. And that is a huge battle to win, because something this Packers offense has been very good at this season, in addition to scoring points, is staying ahead of the sticks and staying in good situations to where that entire playbook is wide open and being able to do every single thing that Matt LaFleur wants to do. And if you can do those things, it makes this offense more effective. This offense they can because they have the playmaking ability of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and the greatest tight end ever and Robert Tonyan, but they don't have, it's not necessarily built for 2nd and 15. Not granted, no offense really is, but this one even more so. It's built to be efficient. And in order to be efficient, you have to be ahead of the sticks. Jason, what do you think about the Packers' ability? Are they going to be able to keep Rodgers clean against guys like Shaq? But the Bears did a decent enough job of keeping Nick Foles clean on Thursday night. And that Bears offensive line is certainly not as good as Green Bay's.
Yeah, I think Tampa's going to scheme the hell out of their pass rush and try to bring it from different places. So I don't think it's going to be a completely clean game for Rodgers. I think the key is going to be the quick pass and just the quick decisiveness, which is not a problem this year. It's something I wanted him to fix the last 2 seasons, and he seems to have done it finally. Bought in, quick read, get the ball into the hands. That's the best way to neutralize the pass rush next to your offensive line itself. But the line's been fantastic. So I'm not worried about that. I don't think that's going to be something that is going to really have the Packers struggling. I also think they're going to be able to run the ball. They've got so many multiple things they do out of each formation. It's a good defense, but there's also some youth to it. So I think there's an opportunity. I think the secondary is an area where, and obviously with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, that's an area where you want your opponent to be. If there's going to be a I don't know, is it kink in the armor? Am I saying that right? It would be there. So that's my thought. I think take advantage of missing the big guy in the middle. Don't not let that be something that helps your offense churn and be an advantage for you. Until I see them struggle to protect Rodgers, even though he's not running around as much as he used to, I just have to continue to believe that they'll continue to do it. And it's impressive too, when you think about the different combinations of offensive linemen that they've had out there, bringing Rick Wagner out there in the absence of Mercedes Lewis. Now you've got Mercedes Lewis, who's a great blocker, and he can pop out there. I mean, he can still catch a couple balls. I think there's too many options on offense, and it's a quick rhythm now, and Rodgers is totally bought in, and I think that's one of the big – I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the 2 times he's been sacked have been on stunts and blitzes. They weren't just pure pass rush.
And they were on him. It was him holding the ball. I mean, Rodgers even said as much. Those would be sacks that were attributed to him. Paul, you were going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Jason was saying about Mercedes Lewis. We know Devontae Adams is back. We know Kenny Clark's back, but Lewis is a low-key, big-time addition this week because of what he brings as a blocker. As I said, the Bucs run defense is very good. 2.5 yards per carry is all they're allowing. The Packers' outside zone run scheme, moving to the right, moving to the left, running back hits the hole. Tight end plays an important part in that blocking sequence. And then especially with Billy Turner. I wrote about him earlier this week and how well he's done for the past 2 games. But this is going to be his biggest test against Shaq Barrett, who primarily lines up on that side of the defensive line. And having someone like Mercedes Lewis, who's a proven blocker of veterans, having him there in line as someone who can provide some help, I think he's a low-key addition that they're getting off the injury report that can provide a boost both in the run game and in the pass blocking for this Packers offense.
That it could be. And you look at the middle of their defense, I think that's where some of this game could swing a little bit too. And the Packers have faced some really good middle linebackers, overhang defenders, whatever you want to call them. Malcolm Jenkins, Deion Jones, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Demario Davis. There's been quite a few of those guys. And the Packers have barbecued them, all of them. If you look at the last game they played, this is the lasting image of me in my head of that Falcons game. And to me, the genius and brilliance of Matt LaFleur. Deion Jones is a ball player. And it was Malik Taylor they brought in motion. And it was a simple run play to Aaron Jones. Rodgers fakes a throw to Malik Taylor. And Deion Jones has no idea where the hell the ball is. Not a clue. That's the kind of cat and mouse game. So I know Devin White is saying unleash me, and Levante David is as good as it gets in the middle. I'm interested to see what Matt LaFleur does to try and play with those guys a little bit. And I think Aaron Jones could possibly keep them busy. Like I said, I think you might see him as the jet motion guy, some more stuff from Jamal Williams, some more stuff potentially from A.J. Dillon. This could be a game for him to kind of get rolling off of the bye week. I think you could see some stuff like that as well. I think this could be a big deal. And I think that the Packers have just found ways to attack the middles of defenses, and they've made legit plays like that. I think that's going to be a big deal.
Jake, here's the thing. Question for you, because you always say solve your problems with aggression, right? I see Tampa taking an aggressive approach tomorrow, and I think Matt LaFleur and his staff, and finally, I mean, no disrespect to past regimes, but this coaching staff is the type that will take advantage and make Tampa's aggressiveness work against them. That's what I want to see is don't let them be successful and set the tone early. Make that aggressiveness work against them and make them regret doing it.
They've talked about it this week too, as Rodgers was even talking. I think I might have been on the McAfee show. It might have been in media availability. Forgive me. I listened to him talk a bunch, so it's kind of hard to keep them all straight. But he said something about how you have to respect their blitz packages that they have and the ones that they're able to bring, because they haven't done it a ton. But Devin White says he wants to be unleashed. Okay. Frankly, be careful what you wish for, because blitzing Aaron Rodgers in recent years has become the way to beat him. This year's a different Aaron Rodgers. This is 2014 Aaron Rodgers. This is 2010 Aaron Rodgers. This is 2011 Aaron Rodgers. This is MVP, hail to the king, Aaron Rodgers. This is the best quarterback in football, Aaron Rodgers. It's go time. So that young secondary's back there. They're good. They're talented. Might be a long day for those young boys, because they've got some players back there, but they're a little banged up. Carlton Davis is hurt. He's questionable. That'll be an interesting matchup. And even if he is ready, 17's back. So I wish you the best of luck. The Packers, I know Kevin King may not be ready to roll, but honestly, if you had to ask, I think the Packers will take the trade off of Kevin King and we'll switch to defense now. Kenny Clark is back. Matt LaFleur said Kenny Clark is ready to roll, and I'm excited because Kenny Clark, in my opinion, is the Packers' best player on defense, or maybe if not the best, the most important. And by most important, I mean, you've kind of seen it, right? I mean, the player who they can least, if Zadarius Smith misses time with injury, and this is no disrespect to Z, obviously, the Packers still have Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary. Whereas on the defensive line, it's Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster, and those guys are they're Jags. Whereas Preston Smith, he hasn't played like it, but he has potential to be very good. And Rashawn Gary's the 12th overall pick, or was the 12th overall pick. He has potential to be a very, very good player. Kenny Clark is back. Rashawn Gary should be back. Kevin King may or may not play. We kind of talked about that a little bit. But on the defensive side of the ball, this game to me is very, very simple. Tom Brady's passer rating is over 100 when he's pressured. It's below 50 when he's not. And Tom Brady not doing well under pressure is nothing new. That's always been the way to beat him. It's just that's always been the hard thing to do, right, is getting pressure on him. With this Tampa Bay team, they've got some guys up front that have been good, but they've also been inconsistent. Ali Marpe had a rough game the other night. Tristan Wirfs, that's been the tweet that's gone viral, is Khalil Mack literally like Reggie White throwing him with one arm. That was pretty incredible. I think that the Packers pass rush, Z, Preston, Kenny, Rashawn, those are the guys. I hope you ate your Wheaties because you're going to need to be good to go. The running game, that just doesn't worry me that much. Tampa Bay, Ronald Jones, I know he's kind of a friend of the program by extension because we're friends with Luke Neal, but he's a pass catcher kind of by trade. He's run for 100 yards recently, but it's just not something that he's going to wreck the game. Leonard Fournette has never been anything more than a 5-star recruit.
And he's hurt.
And he's hurt. Keyshawn Vaughn fumbled last week and is in the doghouse. And Bruce Arians doesn't want to run the ball anyways, so I'm not real concerned about their running game or anything of that nature. So I'm not too concerned about that. On the defensive side of the ball, to me, it really is as simple as, do they pressure Tom Brady? If they do, I think they can get them to make enough mistakes. And the Bucs are kind of an undisciplined bunch. If they don't, it could be a long day. Because if Tom's got time, he could sit back there and still pick you apart. Because like I said, there's not a defense he hasn't seen. So he'll still be able to pick you apart because he's as smart as anybody. Paul, what's your key on that side of the ball? What are your thoughts?
I think Kenny Clark's return is going to be huge for the pass rush. When you think of Kenny Clark, you think about the help that he can provide to the run defense, and he absolutely will. But to the pass rush, I think that's been missing. So last year, the Packers were top 5 in terms of pressure rate on the quarterback. This year, they ranked 25th. And that's not a coincidence that Clark hasn't played since basically the second half of week 1 through Sunday when he'll make his return. And what he does is he takes double teams, which is what Z has had to do the last few weeks. So that frees up Z, that frees up Preston Smith more, Rashawn Gary, all those guys around him. But also the way the way he's able to penetrate the middle of the offensive line. What's the quickest way to the quarterback? Going around the edge, or there's a hole in the middle and you run through there? Absolutely through the middle and the space that Clark can make through just the penetration that he has. So he's going to be huge for this pass rush. And also the offensive line of the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers are the most penalized team in the NFL this season in terms of penalties, and they're second in terms of yards. And if you break it down by, defensive pass interference, offensive holding, each individual penalty, the Bucs are first in penalty or offensive holding, and then second in false starts. So this is an offensive line that the Packers can take advantage of.
That they are. And Jason, just overall, we're mentioning the pass rush. Preston Smith is somebody who's gotten off to a bit of a slow start. Is this something that you think can help him with Kenny Clark coming back? Because I know that we've kind of talked about a few different things. And that being said, he hasn't won his one-on-ones. And that's still kind of a cause for concern, at least on my end. But do you think Kenny Clark coming back could at least help maybe unleash him and help him find some of that form from a season ago?
You're like inside my brain. This is scary. That's why you know we've done this show. Okay, so it looks like Brady's just taking a snap. He's actually, it's hard to see because it doesn't, he's actually already on his knees, right? So that's what I'm hoping happens several times tomorrow when Tom Brady sees two Smith brothers bearing down on him, or Rashawn Gary, or whoever it is. Preston Smith said earlier this week, he was talking, he did an interview on one of the Wisconsin radio shows and said, hey, I've been dropping back in coverage more. Some of my responsibilities have changed, but Jake, you specifically said one-on-one, and the tape don't lie and the ball don't lie. So if you're not winning your one-on-ones, obviously you're not as effective. So at least Rashawn Gary's having a good season so far has mitigated a little bit of what Preston's not doing, but that's exactly where I was going. I was like, this is the prime opportunity for Preston Smith to kind of remind everybody that he is part of this defense too, and he's a big factor. Zadarius Smith's going to get his snaps. He was questionable. He had an injury, but he's going to play according to everything we've seen from Zadarius. He hasn't missed a game yet. And I just go back to the Dallas game where he was down on the ground like 4 or 5 times. He came back every single time. Some of those may or may not have actually been injury related, but I digress. Preston Smith's a big key. But I think this is one too where it's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Mike Pettin. Remember how we felt about Mike Pettin coming out of last season, and just it was the 49ers and they're a totally different beast last season. And but there were questions. Is Mike Pettin the guy? This is one of those times where you're playing against a really good head coach, a good offense, a Hall of Fame quarterback who's not like he was before, but he's still a Hall of Fame quarterback, really good weapons on offense. You've got to make the pocket uncomfortable. If you do that, the Bucs are not going to cook it all day. Because like you said, Jake, the running game, I'm not too concerned about it. The names strike fear in you a little bit, but Leonard Fournette, okay, he had one really good season. LaShawn McCoy has been around for a long time, but the long time part's starting to catch up with him a little bit. So to me, it's the Super Bowl formula. When did the Patriots lose Super Bowls? When Tom Brady was under pressure. Get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and you have to score a lot of points, obviously, as well. That certainly helps. So that's going to get to the predictions portion. It's Green Bay, it's Tampa Bay, an old school NFC Central battle from my childhood, obviously, from the days of, let's see, it would have been Trent Dilfer. And
those are my first memories of Bucs Packers. Trent Dilfer under center.
Trent Dilfer under center, but obviously. Yeah, obviously known more for their defense. Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Derek Brooks, some of those really good teams. They won the Super Bowl, obviously, with John Gruden. That would have been after they left. I think that would have been after they left the NFC Central, and it became the NFC South at that point, obviously, that they moved down to. But it'll be Green Bay. It's Tampa Bay. The Packers really have a chance to. Tampa Bay is coming off a bad loss. They're 3-2. They lost in Chicago. Green Bay is 4-0, feeling good about themselves. They have a chance to get to 5-0, keep pace with the rest of the NFC. Seattle won last week, obviously beating Minnesota. They are on a bye this week, so they'll kind of have to keep pace with that in terms of the NFC 1 seed, which really, at this point, that's what you're looking for. With all due respect to the Bears, they've won their games, and that's fine. I respect the Bears. Roger, are the Bears a threat to the NFC North? So there you go.
That should just be our new intro.
I love that.
I can't quite steal that too often because I think Aaron will stab me if that's the case. That's definitely her thing. So that's adapted material, but it's hilarious, as you guys can gather. Like I said, Paul's laughing pretty good there. But overall, the Packers' goal is the 1 seed. The goal is to host the NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. I know that there has been some talk as to whether or not the postseason this year is going to happen in a normal way or if it's going to be in a bubble. And Troy Vincent basically said that a bubble is not going to happen. Now it's October 17th and a lot can change between now and then. But for right now, I'm taking him at his word and saying that the postseason is not going to be in a bubble. Cool. Let's get the NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers has never started an NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. I'd like to see one. Fans or no fans, whatever. I don't care. That's your goal. In order to do that, these are the games you got to win. In your conference, on the road, very similar to the way you just had to beat the New Orleans Saints a couple weeks ago. Tampa Bay is a desperate team coming in after losing a bad game in Chicago, a game they should have won, but their quarterback had a bit of a rough moment and forgot what down it was. I'm sure you've heard by this point that maybe that happened. I think that here's the thing. Tampa Bay came into this season as a bit of the hype team, right? They brought in Tom Brady. They brought in Rob Gronkowski. They brought in a bunch of different pieces, and a lot of people expected them to just plug and go. And it's not that simple. This isn't Madden, and it's not as simple as plug and play. Well, now they're struggling a little bit, and they make stupid mistakes, and they look like a team who's trying to figure out how to play with each other. And Rob Gronkowski, quite frankly, looks like somebody who's not played in a year and is injured. Big surprise there. I think Green Bay looks like a team that's played together for an entire year. They have that continuity. They have that well-oiled machine. I know Team Degenerate, Matt Bove, talked about this on our site early in the season, how those teams that have played together like that, that's going to be something you're going to want to look at, especially early in the season. It's not quite early now, but the Packers are good and talented enough to the point where that still matters. So the fact that they've been together and they're talented enough, it all matters to work together. Tampa Bay is talented, but they haven't worked together long enough. And now you add in, they've played 5 games, but Mike Evans has been in and out of the lineup. Chris Godwin's been in and out of the lineup. They really haven't been able to play a game with their full squad. And now this is really their first game that they've really played all together since week 1. And even that game, they kind of had Mike Evans pulled up early with a hammy, and they weren't able to do a whole lot there either. I think that this is one of those games that comes down to who's more likely to make the boneheaded mistake. And I think that's Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians, to me, I don't understand the hype around him personally. I know he had a good season in Arizona, obviously, where they went to the NFC Championship game. I know he had a good season in Indianapolis, taking over for Chuck Pagano that one year. Otherwise, to me, he just talks really loud and his team throws the ball down the field. That's cool. His teams are undisciplined, and I think that's shining through here in Tampa. And I think that the Bucs are a team that are undisciplined, and they're more likely to turn the ball over. The Packers they haven't turned the ball over. I did call my shot and say somebody's going to muff a punt tomorrow, so I think that could happen without Tyler Ervin. But even still, Tampa Bay is more likely to make a turnover that will hurt more than the Packers will. So I think they win 37-31. Jason, fly away.
Wow, you're going to let me go second. All right, so last year, every year the Packers have a game like this. They're the better team. They go on the road, and for whatever reason, and I'll blame it on the heat, because if anyone knows about the heat factor, it's me living out here in Phoenix. I've got Tampa winning this game by a point, merely just because of it's a bye week, coming off a bye, a little bit rusty. Bruce Arians, no risk it, no biscuit. I got to enjoy some of that undisciplined play out here when he was with the Cardinals. It was glorious. They had a couple of good seasons. Those were not glorious. So I hope I'm wrong. Again, I'll set myself up for all the beatings I'm going to get over this score pick, and I've been wrong a couple times this season already. But I see it being a tough one. Could go either way. I know the spread's – what's the spread right now? Green Bay by 1?
1 to 1.5. It kind of depends on where you look.
So it's really just a matter of do they travel well and are they ready to go after the bye, and just some of those factors. You would think a Matt LaFleur team would be prepared and not have the run into some of the issues that past teams have, but I just have that funny feeling that we're looking at the San Diego game, or not San Diego, the LA game, the LA Chargers game from last year, and that's really all it comes down to. Packers are the better team, but I don't know if it's going to work out.
All right, so Jason's wrong. He's been fired. Paul, tell him why he's wrong.
I mean, Jacob, you hit on a lot of the points. This is a talented Buccaneers team, and it's going to be the Packers' toughest test this year. They have a good offensive line, Hall of Fame quarterback, stacked wide receiver group. On the defensive side of the ball, stout defensive line. They have a young secondary that knows how to force turnovers. But honestly, based on what we've seen from this Packers group, I'm not going to pick against them until I see them lose or I see something change. And you know how – and they're coming off a bye. And you know how I think it's Andy Reid who has this reputation where Andy Reid, he has this huge, win versus loss record off a bye. I think
he's only lost once off the bye in his entire career.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous like that. I think Matt LaFleur is on his way to that. I am on this Matt LaFleur hype train, his play calling ability, and I think this extra time to prepare, this Packers offense is going to roll, and it's going to be the difference maker. And as the defense has done all year, they're going to take their lumps. Like I said, this is a talented, there's weapons in this Buccaneer secondary, but they're going to come up with either a turnover or a stop, just as they've done every game this year, and as they did last year, Packers win.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that about Andy Reid and Matt LaFleur, because do you guys know what happened last year when the Packers came off the bye?
They got rolled.
It was San Francisco part 1. So
Yeah.
that would be interesting. So Paul and I have taken the Packers to win, and Jason has taken the Packers to lose. Yago, tell me.
Oh, there's a big surprise. That's an incredible. I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
Oh, big surprise. Jason thinks the Packers are going to lose.
These are excellent. Wow.
Credit to, again, Aaron Alice at Heroin for these clips. They're phenomenal. And I couldn't help but use them. So I appreciate that. Guys, we're out of time. Joey the Jaguar, according to your research, I appreciate you looking at that. Jason is wrong.
Probably.
Shout out to those guys, too.
Hopefully.
That's, for those of you guys that are not familiar with Joey the Jaguar and Big B, that is the Underage Packers podcast. Future beat writers, reporters, whatever their heart desires, they can do that. So I appreciate you guys coming in for everything like that. I hope you're not right, Jason, but I am scared. Mom's afraid when here's a story about my mother. This is what
here we go. This is it. Tune in.
So I like to joke on Twitter that I am the most accomplished Little League baseball coach in the history of the world. And I do say that as a joke because that's not really a thing, because honestly, who cares about Little League baseball? But we were playing a game once and my team was the best team in the league and we were playing the worst team in the league, and it was 14-0 at the start of the inning. And we put in one of our worst pitchers and we made an error, and then we made like another error and a run scored. And I just hear Mom like huffing and puffing. And she said something along the lines of, "Oh my God, you guys are falling apart." And I was like, it's 14-1. I'm like not worried at all. She's on pins and needles until the game's over. Like the final score and the difference. Last year's Packers team, that whole 13-3 thing was not good enough. It has to look good too. So that's the way that works. So guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check out everything Game On Wisconsin. Tomorrow is a big day. We are back to our game day coverage, and it starts with Game On Fantasy at 10 a.m. We have some bye weeks. No games have been moved. Bills and Chiefs has moved to Monday night at like 2:00 in the afternoon because of COVID, but be sure to check that out for your guys' stuff. We have Gage and Tyler breaking down your fantasy matchups. And at 2:25, we have the pre-snap. Myself, Alex Strofe, and Jimmy Christensen will be breaking down Bucs and Packers. We are joined by the founder of the Draft Network, JC Cornell, will be joining us tomorrow. Big Bucs fan. So we're going a little behind enemy lines there. Talk about the Jamal Williams clip that's gone viral and everything else leading up to the Bucs and Packers. Of course, we'll have the post route right after that. Call in, give your thoughts after the Packers beat the Bucs to Alex Strofe. Producer Kyle will be there as well, so you get to listen to his voice, and he decides whether or not to let you on the show. And then after that, we have the roundtable with myself, Maggie, Sanjay, and Tim Backus is making his debut. And Tim, I apologize if I just butchered your last name. I suppose I should have asked that before we came on air, but I didn't. So the big thing too, guys, I want to get to is we have raised just over $3,500 for the J Swag Daddy swag bag giveaway, $3,581 for Jamal Williams' charity. That is the clip that has gone viral this week. Nonetheless, that show is for charity, and that is something I've tried to remind everyone that has been willing to share that clip. That is what that show's for. So be sure to donate to the link using below. It's a toy and bicycle drive for the kids, and we want to thank our sponsor for that show in the top right corner that you can see. That is Mayfield Sports. If you want to book a autograph signing or motivational speaking venture, be sure to check out MayfieldSportsMarketing.com. Kyle, go ahead and throw up their overlay there if you could for me for their big logo so that people can see that beautiful logo that they have. They have representatives from people, not just Jamal Williams, but his teammates like Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and Packers of yesteryear like Antonio Freeman, Gilbert Brown, and Dorsey Levens. So you want to check that MayfieldSportsMarketing.com to book them today. So that is it. It is Packers Bucs tomorrow at 3:30. I want to thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week. And of course, as always, Jason is wrong. Go Pack Go.